Fuck no shit.
And with this team, it's kind of similar in a sense that Bobrovsky's probably got him gone. I mean, but you could, last night I said to somebody, they said if it had to be voted on today, and I actually thought Towns would vote. Like, that's how talented they are. And obviously there's so much stuff to the song to be written, but he's been that good, and they've been that balanced.
They were fourth out of the four teams remaining.
So, we talk a lot about the game and how it's changed, and it's a speed game, and speed is such a big factor. And then when I look at the Florida Panthers, I don't see a team that I think is overly fast. I think they've got a couple of guys that are really good skaters. But, you talk about Matthew Tkachuk has been I know he's probably banged up too, but he's not fleet of foot, and he's got 16 points in the playoffs. Ho-hum, and he probably is playing hurt. Sam Bennett, not a burner. Alexander Barkov, not a burner. And then, excuse me, you look on the flip side at the Carolina Hurricanes, and we say, wow, that's a really fast team. And you look at how they're built, and they're, a little bit on the small side. When you look at the Carolina Hurricanes after this season, and they get close once again, but they fall to a really good team in the conference final, what kind of conversations do you think that they're going to be having postseason about where they're at with this roster and what kind of changes need to be made in order to take that next step?
So, what do you mean?
Carolina.
Oh, Carolina. Sorry, I thought for some reason you cut out for a second there. I didn't know we were talking.
That was just my voice. Sorry.
Okay. Yeah, I understand that. So I think it's interesting with Carolina. I thought Bruno Moore's answer last night about, he had a really interesting press conference, and he talked about all the negativity, and he talked about, and then he talked about style of play, and I thought his answer about style of play was really interesting, about that the two of them play pretty similarly. There wasn't much of a difference. I think, to me, I thought there were a couple things that separated them. Number one, Florida's better. They have more top players, I would say, and even their depth made a bigger difference than Carolina's did. Carolina got hurt by the injuries on the blue line. Florida was just a better, deeper team. In the first period where Carolina knocked two Florida guys on their asses. And I was like, I hadn't seen that all series. The interesting thing to me about Carolina is the owner there, Tom Dundon, he's talked a lot about getting a superstar. That's why they went after Rand. And I think that's interesting because, especially you look at the play last night that Barkov made on Orlov to score that late goal for Aggie. You need players who can do things like that. And Carolina has some pretty good players like Aho Jarvis. But I would say that I think one of the things that's really interesting would be, I'm curious to see if Dundon continues to think that that's something we have to do. We have to get a superstar player here. And I just thought that the biggest difference was that Florida had more depth and more elite level talent than Carolina did. And knowing that that's how Dundon thinks and what he's talked about before, I wonder if this summer is all about the pursuit of that kind of a superstar.
Freed, I thought it was a really, I mean, obviously anytime you get the emotions of a press conference after, I love the way he walked it through from his thoughts on, he basically said in the off season when he watched Pesci, Shea, Haravine and Noyes and all these guys go out the door. He had the same thought that a lot of us did. He was like, I'm like, are we going to make the playoffs? Yeah. So for them to make the additions and to make strides in progress.
And for him to get the most out of the group. That's
100%. Like I thought, but I agree with you that this team, like last night when Carrier threw the 5 cross checks in a row, you're like, man, that's me, right? Timing of it wasn't a penalty, but it's a guy that's not natural. For him, that's one thing, but for the other guys to all of a sudden to start trying to be mean when it's not really in their DNA, as opposed to Florida, who's just naturally mean. I agree with you, but I think the chemistry of this team up front needs to. I mean, I think a guy like Burns will come back and take a cut and stuff like that. But I think you have to look at the build and say we do need to add some natural meanness up front. And I mean, hypothetically, if the superstar that's available, who they clearly tried to trade for at the deadline, is Mitch Marner, I'm not sure if that's the type of superstar that fits.
Unless you're adding around it.
Oh yeah, I know, but the current roster, that's where they tie up all their money and adding another exceptionally skilled guy.
It's not how the Capitals would want this announcement to be made either.
Yeah, it doesn't mean that sometimes things like this don't happen. We've seen situations before where, sometimes something gets sent in an error, or something, or sometimes that one department does something and another department isn't fully aware of it. It's not ideal, but I've seen these kinds of things happening. But in this particular case, the Capitals are disputing that letter was sent.
Okay, good to know. Go ahead, Freeds. Can we just, because I want to get Freeds before. Freeds, what was your takeaway from, did anything stand out to you in Treliving's press conference?
Obviously, the mantra here is we've got to get mentally stronger. We've got to figure out why we crumple in these big moments. I wasn't surprised that he didn't give much away in terms of Marner and Tavares. He doesn't like negotiating publicly, and I think that was his way of saying we're not going to do it here. But he made it very clear that Marner has a decision to make too, and everyone here has got A, and also B, that we have to be prepared for the fact that our DNA could be changed for us. So it's a big off season for them, but he didn't tip his hand at much. He didn't make a lot of news. I'm not surprised at that. It's already ablaze here in Toronto. I just don't think he wanted to pour more gasoline on the fire, and his answer on Marner and Tavares to me is pretty simple. It's that I'm not going to talk about this publicly.
Well, there's going to be plenty. If the Dallas Stars don't win tonight, there's still going to be plenty of time for everybody to keep talking about all the things that could happen this offseason. Okay, so based on line rushes for the Edmonton Oilers, so Jeff Skinner skated on a line with Adam Henrique and Trent Frederick. Corey Perry got the bump up to the first line with McDavid and Ryan Nugent-Hopkins. Kane, Draisaitl, Kapanen, and then Janmark, Colson, and Arvidsson. It also looks like, so that would mean Jeff Skinner would slot in. It also looks like they might be going with 6D. Ekholm skated with Bouchard. Stetcher looked like the odd man out. There's still time for anything to happen here. What do you think is the more
they're comfortable with both? And they are not afraid of both. So who, because I'm not expecting Brown to play. So who skated as the 12 forward? Skinner?
Skinner, yeah. Well, that actually, I brought this up yesterday because he's only played in the one. Skinner plays one playoff game in his career, wins a Stanley in his career. Like that possibility was out there, which is crazy to think about. But I hope that doesn't happen for his sake. But it looks like, based on the line rushes, that he is merely, I know it's kind of simple, but just score goals. Is that
the second round? And now look at the.
Let's drop off this grocery order. There we go. Photo. Wait. Now we go and deliver the next one.
Into Jake Ottinger's zone, that sweet spot where he becomes the money goalie in the playoffs. The thing is, you just don't like to be down 3-1 for him to get back into play here. Elliot, somebody will be chatting with.
When I took 2 days off when my voice was starting to go, it turned out to be a smart thing.
It gets the whole weekend of rest your eye. Well, and then you really don't have the opportunity to talk to me. That's why you like it. Okay. LA Freedom, Hockey Night in Canada, and 32 Thoughts. Okay, we're going to take a